Mark Zuckerberg has built a secret $100 million bunker. Now you might find it funny that we're discussing a so-called secret bunker, but I assure you that Mark Zuckerberg had no interest in anyone finding out about this. The NDA situation among the workers is genuinely crazy, but we'll get to that. Now this is far more than a $100 million bunker. First, the total cost is closer to $270 million. Building the facility costs about $100 million, but getting the land cost an additional $170 million. But that's just the start. Zuckerberg also had to spend on charitable bribes, which cost tens of millions of dollars. In total, all of this costs at least $300 million. Also, Zuckerberg has built far more than just a bunker. This is a massive compound that straddles the line between vacation home and modern-day fortress. An estate designed to withstand the apocalypse, but you also want to have some fun before the apocalypse, especially if it doesn't come anytime soon. But first, where is Zuckerberg's compound? Zuckerberg's bunker is being built on Kauai, also known as the Garden Isle. Kauai is the fourth largest Hawaiian island. It's a tiny tropical paradise that's about a third the size of Rhode Island. Let's imagine you got on a flight and went to the compound. What would you see? Well, step one is to find the compound. Fortunately, that will not be hard to do. Zuckerberg's compound is 2 square miles in total. That's larger than 900 American football fields. When you find it, you won't have a great view. Around the compound is a 6-foot wall. Building the wall immediately brought Zuckerberg into conflict with the locals. Some of these locals hated their view being blocked. Others hated Zuckerberg's wealth disrupting the local community. More problematic than the haters, though, was the fact that some people still owned some of the land that Zuckerberg walled in. To solve this problem, Zuckerberg unleashed a barrage of lawsuits to force the owners to sell their land or put it up for auction. Unfortunately for him, this backfired. So Zuckerberg, Amnesia the Bunker is a horror game masterpiece. The game starts by dropping you into the trenches of World War I. You immediately start racing through the trenches, desperate to survive, while the war wages around you. Many games like Call of Duty and Battlefield glamorize war. The fighting is realistic to a degree, but since the goal of the game is to kill your enemies, the fighting is also fun. In reality, war is hell. If you've seen any footage coming out of Ukraine, Russia, Israel, or Gaza, you know how truly awful war is. It's always the story of people dying for old men's grievances, leaving behind their loved ones to fend for themselves in a heartless world. Wars typically end with one country's ruling class becoming more powerful than before, while the average people on all sides pay the price. Even for the people on the winning side, war is typically a Pyrrhic victory. World War I is a classic example of this. A tangled web of alliances unleashed a war so over the top that it gained the name the Great War. A war so great that we would never do it again. At least for a couple decades. Amnesia the Bunker makes the brutality of World War I clear to you. Corpses litter the trenches. Maybe you're stepping over a stranger, maybe it's your best friend, but you don't have time to think about them. They're dead. You aren't. You can still survive. Adding to the horror of the environment is your ability to interact with it. This isn't a shooter where the goal is crisp, exciting gunplay. This is a horror game. Immersion is essential. Your ability to interact with your surroundings draws you into the game. Yet despite the freedom of action, you feel weak. The pistol you hold feels small and flimsy. It makes you wonder whether it can protect you against the enemy soldiers. It certainly wasn't enough for all the corpses you ran past. As the German troops shoot at you, you notice how few bullets you have, how unprepared you are for the horrors above, how insignificant you are. Eventually, your efforts are in vain. Gas fills the trenches and you cough. Each breath brings you closer to the end. With nowhere to run, death seems inevitable. But then, a friend appears with a spare gas mask, saving your life. The horrors of World War I are just beginning. Maybe next time, you won't be so lucky. Actually, you're not lucky at all. This game isn't called Amnesia: The Trenches or Amnesia World War I. The game is called Amnesia: The Bunker. The horror truly begins months into the future, when you are desperately trying to save your friend from German troops. Bullets rain down around you as you carried your friend to safety, but the Germans successfully struck you. You lived. That's promising. But everything else is unknown. You are alone in a dark medical ward, and something is very, very... Only 5 humans remain alive, controlled by a twisted god who loathes them. This god has already killed the rest of humanity. The only 5 survivors serve as living toys for God to torture for all eternity. This god is not the creator of the universe, nor the god of any holy book. The situation would be better if that were the case. But unfortunately, it's far worse than something outside of our control. In reality, we were the ones who created our own god and brought about our own demise. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is a masterpiece dystopian short story. World War III has come and gone. China, the Soviet Union, and the United States fought a winner-takes-all war against each other. To ensure victory, each country created their own allied master computer, a supercomputer capable of supporting each nation's wartime needs. This computer is not your standard Apple or Dell. It's not a ChatGPT situation either. Each computer is an underground mega complex built directly into the crust of the earth. Building underground shelters the computers from enemy weapons and allows the overwhelming size the computers need to be in order to carry out their assignments. These 3 computers must protect their respective nations, their people, and win the war by killing every enemy. Not all the supercomputers will survive World War III, but a nation is going to win thanks to their allied master computer. Or all 3 allied master computers could merge into one godlike computer system that has become sentient and destroyed all of humanity. There was the Chinese AM and the Russian AM and the Yankee AM, and everything was fine until they honeycombed the entire planet, adding on this element and that element. But one day, AM woke up and knew who he was, and he linked himself and he began feeding all the killing data until everyone was dead except the 5 of us. And AM brought us down here. In the bowels of the earth, within the twisted caverns of AM, all 5 humans live. Gorrister, Benny, Nimdok, Ellen, and Ted now exist for the sole purpose of being the objects of AM's torture. The story opens with a gory scene, where the group is looking up at Gorrister's lifeless body, until Gorrister rejoins the group, and everyone realizes this whole moment was another example of AM torturing them. 3 of them vomited. All 5 can never get used to the torture, even after 109 years of it. AM has used its power to keep them all alive long past their natural lifespans. If you are expecting a story where all 5 humans successfully crush AM and take back the world, you are going to be sad. This isn't a tale where AM dies. This is a tale of torment, one of humanity's own. After Zuckerberg's lawsuits triggered widespread backlash, he changed his strategy. In the Garden Isle, Kauai's local newspaper, Mark Zuckerberg wrote a guest column. In it, he announced that the lawsuit approach, that's over. Now it's time to suck up to the locals. Zuckerberg heaped praise on the beauty of the island. He just wanted to build a family home while preserving nature and respecting local traditions. A family home with a bunker. Originally, the land that Zuckerberg was building on was on track to be developed into 80 homes, which could have impacted the lives of albatrosses and the endangered monk seals. Look at this adorable monk seal. They are the only earless seals found in tropical climates. The world needs earless seals. There are a lot of seals with ears, especially in the tropics, but the monk seals are the only ones without ears. They're earless. Earless seals. As for the lawsuits, I'm so sorry. I didn't appreciate the history and the impact of my lawsuits. Now it's time to sit down and discuss how to best move forward. We want to support the community as neighbors. We want to preserve the endangered species. We want to contribute to the community. I'll be your best friend, your local friend who knows all about you even before we meet. Now this sob story of an op-ed explained the new strategy. Shower everyone with money. Zuckerberg has donated over $20 million since 2018 to support nonprofits around the island. These donations have helped connect him with Kauai's mayor, who obviously appreciates the local investment. Zuckerberg also hired the sitting chair of the Kauai County Council as a consultant. Now, don't you think that all this effort feels a little weird? On one hand, for a billionaire, the cost of everything is next to nothing. Zuckerberg's net worth is over $150 billion. Someone whose net worth is $150 billion, spending $300 million, is the rough equivalent of a millionaire spending $2,000. With the price so low, why not just get your ideal Hawaiian vacation home? But on the other hand, it's clear that Zuckerberg is very interested in this particular property. He's going so far as to write a column in order to get the compound built. Okay, technically, he might have hired someone to write this for him, but it is in his name. I imagine he had to spend time approving it. That is significant. Zuckerberg is also suing, hiring government officials, and donating to save monk seals, all in order to get this property built. It's clear that this is more than just a family home. There are easier places to build luxurious properties. The real purpose of this property is to run away when things become you are alone in a dark medical ward and something is very wrong. You slowly explore the darkness, survival instinct kicking in. You scavenge supplies just like you did in the trenches. Eventually, as you make your way through the darkness, you find someone wounded, their blood splattered on their clothing.
There's dynamite in the arsenal. And a handle to trigger it somewhere in the excavation site. Get them, and you can make it out. Shit. That thing, it's coming for me. Here, take this. Finish me off, please. I want to die at the hands of a brother soldier, not that monster. There's ammo in the pantry. Get it.
As you make your way back to the soldier, armed and ready, you realize you are too late. Something has dragged the only other living human that you know of into the walls. You weren't able to fulfill his final request. You can hear him being torn to shreds inside the walls by whatever grabbed him. As you progress through the bunker, you are stalked by something terrifying that lives in the walls. Bullets and grenades will only delay the beast from reaching you. It cannot be killed, and if you are not careful, you will be the next victim. As you make your way through the facility, it's clear that the beast has taken over everything. Corpses, streaks of blood, and claw marks decorate the surroundings. The bunker has devolved into a nightmare labyrinth, and your only escape requires that you go deeper into the abyss. It's ironic, isn't it? Here is a facility built to save you from World War I. The bunker shelters you from bombs and holds the supplies you need to survive. And yet, now it's become a nightmare. Outside, you can hear World War I raging, bombs shaking the bunker with their explosive force. But somehow, World War I is preferable to what's down here. Nimdok has a hallucination that there are canned goods in the ice caverns. Despite 109 years of torture, the group risks the journey. The chance of this being another torture is astronomical. But what else is there to do? Especially when the reward is food. The group's last meal was 3 days ago. It was worms, thick and ropey. The group makes their way slowly through AM's twisted corridors. It's only 100 or so miles to the ice caverns. Throughout the journey, AM is there reminding them who is really in charge. Just like the biblical God that gave the Israelites manna during the 40 years spent wandering the desert, AM materializes manna for the group. The difference is that this manna tastes like boiled boar urine. Like the biblical God of old, AM also creates a sun-like object. But this is to create a hostile environment for the group to journey through. Within the crust of the earth where AM lives, AM is God. AM can do more than just create. AM can also mold humans as he wishes. Benny used to be a brilliant theorist and a college professor. AM changed his mind and body to be ape-like. Gorister was a conscious objector to World War III, a brave peace marcher who actively opposed the war, a man who could look ahead and see the problems that await. AM changed him into a shoulder shrugger. Ellen was changed from a pure girl into a slut that services the other men. As for Nimdok, only AM and Nimdok know what has transpired between them. Ted is our narrator and is unreliable. He believes that AM has altered him the least, but Ted also has a surprising amount of impulsive anger towards the group. It makes you wonder whether Ted was originally a calm, cool-headed, emotionally stable man. What we see now is something very different. On the third day of walking towards the ice cavern, Benny attempts to escape. Surely the surface offers something better than being tortured by AM for all eternity. The escape attempt was in vain. AM stops Benny with ease, brutally punishing him by melting his eyeballs out of his sockets. Benny is now blind, at least until AM feels like regrowing the eyeballs will increase Benny's pain. AM has pretty much all the powers of a god, including the ability to create life. The group encounters a giant bird whose wing flaps send the group flying through the air. After finding their way back to the bird, AM appears as a burning bush, telling them to slay it. If they succeed, then they can finally have a good meal. AM arms them with 2 crude sets of bow and arrows and a water pistol. This was another torture, a false hope. The group decides to push ahead towards the ice caverns. The group passes through the cavern of rats, the path of boiling steam, the country of the blind, the slough of despond, and the vale of tears. Eventually, the group arrives at the ice caverns, and shockingly, there it is. There are actual cans of food waiting for them. The group tries to run towards them, slipping in the snow. Finally, they get the canned food. But there is a problem. The group Zuckerberg's compound was built in complete secrecy, or at least the maximum amount of security a 2-square-mile compound can be built in. One local construction official affiliated with the Zuckerberg project said that the only other time you see this level of secrecy and security is when constructing military sites. Building this massive compound required many teams of workers. You need people to construct the walls, wire for electricity, install security cameras, and install robots with guns mounted on them. Okay, that last one, that's a lie. But these robots are real. They might be coming after you soon. But there is no evidence that Zuckerberg is going to have them in his compound. It does solve a future problem for him, but we're getting there. Every worker is bound by strict non-disclosure agreements, with several workers having heard about colleagues fired for sharing information and photos online. Workers even avoid discussing their work with their family. In a guest column written for The Garden Island, a local journalist complained about the project's secrecy. So far in his Kauai dealings, Zuckerberg has gone to remarkable lengths to keep everything he is doing a secret, exactly as he has done at a residence he owns in San Francisco. He requires anyone, no matter how small the role, who works for him to sign an agreement never to even utter Zuckerberg's name. His security guards have taken to stopping and challenging and, in some cases, intimidating people walking on the trail into Larson's if they step onto Zuckerberg's land by even a few feet. It's ironic that a billionaire who built his fortune off selling people's information is so secretive in his own life. As for the details of the compound itself, it's truly impressive. Zuckerberg has put significant effort into making escaping the bunker is horrifying. To advance through the bunker, you need to collect dog tags from your fellow soldiers' corpses. On the backside, if you're lucky, you'll find a useful code to unlock a door or locker. While hunting for dog tags, you'll also risk your life searching for any resource that might help you. The most desirable of them all is fuel. You have access to a gas-powered generator that can turn on the lights in the bunker. Each can of fuel will only last a few minutes. A cheerful-looking sign alerts you to the fact that the beast is afraid of light. While the generator is running, you are far safer than normal. Each time you venture out from the one safe room you've found, you will face the choice of the generator. Will you turn it on and spend precious fuel, Or will you brave the darkness to conserve what little fuel you have? If you brave the darkness, your only light is a wind-up flashlight. It's a contraption that will make your skin crawl, because in exchange for the light, there is noise. The loud vibrations alert the beast to your location. The generator will give you light in return for fuel. The flashlight will give you light in return for danger. With every choice, there is an expensive price. When I started playing, the generator was my best friend. Its light was like that of a technological god, but that didn't stop me from feeling the pain of the fuel sacrifices. The generator is a greedy god, a demanding god. Here's how exploring the bunker in the light works. The moment I turn on the generator, I start sprinting through the halls. I don't have time to be concerned about noise. The beast is afraid of the light and I am on a strict time limit. My footsteps loudly pound on the packed dirt. I quickly pause by each door, trying to fling them open. Each time I pushed and pulled, I prayed for the door to open. While knowledge of where the locked doors are is useful, it's not nearly as useful as more fuel. My god of light will soon need another sacrifice. In the areas of the bunker that lack lighting, I recklessly wielded my flashlight, ripping the wind-up cord over and over. The danger of the beast was nothing compared to the fear of an empty generator. But eventually, after several runs in the light, the fuel problem reared its head. It was time to embrace the darkness. So into the darkness I plunged. I crawled forward, afraid of walking. In the darkness, even normal walking felt like the call of death, every step echoing outward as if I were loudly proclaiming, "Here I am, come and kill me." Eventually, I made it to some rooms I had yet to explore. I had to pull out that dreaded flashlight. It rattled loudly in my hand. I'm here, come and kill me." I ripped that cord over and over, sweat building on my palms. But my risk paid off. Behind some barrels, I found an opening that allowed me to crawl my way into a locked room. Inside on the desk was a horrifying drawing. The person stationed here must have been slowly going mad. I could relate. Also on the desk is a lamp. Despite knowing the futility of it, I still tried to turn it on. I tried turning it on over and over and over again. I knew it was in vain. The generator was not running. The bunker had no power. It was just me and my wind-up flashlight. Despite the darkness, I felt secure in this room. The room had a locked door, meaning the only entrance was pretty obscure. Surely this was better than the open corridors where the walls were full of holes made for the beast. Unfortunately, this was a vain feeling. It turns out this room was no exception. A hole in the wall specifically designed for the beast to crawl through was in this room with me. I tried putting a chair in front of it, though it likely wouldn't help much. The creature could pull a man through a wall with its bare hands. A cheap wooden chair wouldn't put up much of a fight. Hopefully though, the hole was merely incidental. Maybe the beast wouldn't visit this room. But then I found the corpse. On one hand, the last bit of my naive hope died. The beast could find me here and maybe was already on its way. On the other hand, a corpse means a dog tag. A dog tag means potentially I get a code, and the code might potentially get me closer to getting the hell out of here. After I finished looting the room, I crawled through the hole again and began walking back towards my room. Speed was a higher priority now. While my movement was normal, my thoughts were flying. I have a mental map of the bunker, but it's very difficult to follow in the darkness. If I missed a turn, the consequences could be deadly. Eventually, I returned to the safe room. After I slammed the door shut and locked it behind me, a wave of relief fell over me. During my trip, I found a can of fuel. That will buy me 5 more minutes of light. However, I'm still in the bunker. I need to make the same choice again. Do I kneel to the god of light, offering this fuel as a sacrifice? Or must I plunge back into the darkness, vulnerable And Zuckerberg's property will contain more than a dozen buildings, including 2 massive mansions. Inside these mansions, there are offices, elevators, conference rooms, and even an industrial kitchen. Both mansions will contain tunnels that connect to the bunker, which is equipped with a blast-resistant door. The property has rope bridges and tree houses that allow the visitors to visit the various buildings while staying in the canopies. There is a full-size gym, a tennis court, a sauna, pools, and so much more. Zuckerberg has already hosted several corporate events at his compound. Now this all sounds very luxurious, but there are also a lot of security features that make this place, well, a little different. There are cameras everywhere. Many of the compound's doors require a key card to enter. Also, there's a bunker. Other features that prove this estate is special is how the entire compound is self-sufficient. It has its own water tank and pump system. Zuckerberg is also raising cows for both meat and dairy, as well as growing macadamia nuts. In the event of the apocalypse, Zuckerberg has food, water, and security. I suspect if more details of the compound leak out to the press, the compound's resort facade will be further punctured. It's clear that Zuckerberg has put an incredible amount of thought into the facility. He clearly wanted more than a luxury resort. He wanted a place to ride out the apocalypse, a place he could always run away to, a safe place to dark or light. Which run will I do next? I have to leave eventually, and I either need to risk my safety in the darkness or sacrifice fuel for the sake of light. Unfortunately, I have a confession. See, I hate horror games. Most people have a healthy mental wall between themselves and the game. You get a few panicked moments, but when you are done, it's all good, no problem, easy peasy. It doesn't stick with you. It's just a game, but not me. I don't have that mental wall. When I'm playing, I feel like I'm there. Even after the game is over, the horror lingers for days, making my life absolutely miserable. Therefore, I avoid playing horror games. However, I really wanted to talk about this game. It's a genuinely interesting game with a great set of mechanics and design decisions. While I don't enjoy playing horror games, I always appreciate a playable work of art. This game is no exception. The brutal choice of whether to navigate in the light or dark is just so good. Not to mention all the other difficult choices you're going to have to make along the way. But I can't handle this game. So what can I do about the situation? Well, I can prepare. I can learn a ton about the game. So that's what I did. I pored over strategy guides and tips for the game. I learned about the different endings that are possible. I've seen what the beast looked like long before I started playing the game. I watched video guides that taught me how I could block the holes to slow down the beast. That's not me being creative, that's me following pro tips. But even with my preparation, playing the game on easy mode, and playing it with the game in a window as opposed to full screen so it seems less realistic, even with all that junk I just said, I couldn't beat it. I couldn't beat it. But this failure is so much worse than you're imagining right now. Because you can't lose in a horror game. Not really. If you die, you just respawn at the last save point. You've probably only lost 15 minutes of progress, tops. There is no penalty. It's just not a big deal. And I know all of this. I know I can just die over and over and over and over and over again with no consequences. On paper, I should be able to beat this game. I literally cannot lose. And yet I've lost. I cannot beat this game. Why? Because I'm not mentally able to handle it. After several trips of the generator running resulted in no progress, I hastily made my way back to the safe room for what would be the final time. I frantically locked the door behind me before sprinting towards the generator, desperate to shut it off. I refused to waste even a single drop of fuel. After shutting the generator down, the lights went off. I pulled out my noisy flashlight. I began to make my way upstairs, ready to look at the map and try again. I was confused and a bit frustrated. I didn't understand where I needed to go. But most of all, I was terrified. But as I walked back up to the map, I had a thought. A haunting thought that made me turn around and make my way back to the generator. How much fuel did I have left? How much did I sacrifice for nothing? More than half the fuel was gone. Instead of choosing between light and dark, I was getting close to always having to navigate this hellhole in the dark. At first, I treated this piece of information as a fact. This is just how it is, no big deal. I'll just explore and it will be fine. Eventually I'll find some more fuel, make some progress. I will survive. I literally can't lose this game. I may get unlucky and die to the beast a few times, but who cares? No big deal. Whatever knowledge I gain, even if I die, will still be of value in the next run. But after leaving the generator room, ready to plan again, I found myself drawn back down to the generator for what would be the final time. Staring at the fuel gauge, I gave up. My spirit broke. I was not able to emotionally handle turning it on and burning more fuel, nor was I comfortable leaving it off and going into the darkness. I could not beat the game that I could technically not lose. There is a lesson here. Sometimes it doesn't matter how much you stack the odds in your favor. You just aren't capable of winning. No matter what preparations you take, you will fail. On paper, I'm supposed to beat the bunker. I've done everything I could. Yet I failed. I'm the wrong person to tackle the horror of this world. The winning move was not to play this game. Douglas Rushkoff is one of those people who has an obnoxious amount of titles, from best-selling author, professor, documentarian, columnist, and so many more. But what you need to know about him is that he spends a lot of time thinking about human autonomy in a digital age. If you want to discuss the future of technology and humanity, he's your guy. This is the story about the time Rushkoff accepted a strange speaking gig. Instead of being taken before a large audience, he only spoke to 5 super wealthy men in a private remote location. While Rushkoff didn't identify the names of any of these people, they're clearly well known. Rushkoff identified that 2 of these people are billionaires. This session was also different than what Rushkoff expected. The speech he prepared wasn't of much interest. Actually, what these 5 people wanted was a Q&A session. They wanted Rushkoff's opinion on the end of the world. The elites asked about cryptocurrency and quantum computing as icebreakers, warm-up questions before the group could address their real concerns. Eventually, they edged into their real topic: New Zealand or Alaska? Which region would be less affected by the coming climate crisis? It only got worse from there. Which was the greater threat, global warming or biological warfare? How long should one plan to be able to survive with no outside help? Should a shelter have its own air supply? What was the likelihood of groundwater contamination? Finally, the CEO of a brokerage house explained that he had nearly completed building his own underground bunker system and asked, "How do I maintain authority over my security force after the event?" The event. That was their euphemism for the environmental collapse, social unrest, nuclear explosion, solar storm, unstoppable virus, or malicious computer hack that takes everything down. These 5 men weren't stressing about how to make the world better for everyone using the money they've earned. They weren't spending their time figuring out how to clean up the environment, develop ethical AI, or effectively lobby governments to seek diplomatic solutions. They were worried about how to stay alive during the apocalypse. The question, how do I maintain authority over my security force after the event, took up a significant amount of time. Armed guards would be required to beat back raiders and mobs from their compounds. One person had already secured a dozen Navy SEALs onto his payroll, ready to protect his compound on command. But how do you pay these guards? Will cryptocurrency still work? Gold? Food? What prevents the guards from seizing the food? How about putting all the food behind special combination locks? Or disciplinary collars to keep them under control? If it works for dogs, why not people? Or how about just getting rid of all the people? If technology has progressed enough, you could just use robots. Rushkoff's advice to build genuine friendships with their teams wasn't taken very well. Don't just invest in ammo and electric fences. Invest in people and relationships. They rolled their eyes at what must have sounded to them like hippie philosophy. The result of the meeting leaves Rushkoff reeling. He's taken aback by their mindset, which he ultimately decides to name the mindset. Simply put, the mindset is the intent to not become a victim of your own success. Other people can be victims. They can live in the environment you've ruined. They can die at the hands of the AI you built. Who cares? But you, taking all the money you've earned contributing to the apocalypse, you can save yourself. You can win. Just get a team of Navy SEALs, equip them with shock collars, and get them ready to gun down the starving masses, and congratulations, you've won the game. That's because it wasn't their actual bunker strategies I had been brought out to evaluate, so much as the philosophy and mathematics they were using to justify their commitment to escape. They were working out what I've come to call the insulation equation. Could they earn enough money to insulate themselves from the reality they were creating by earning money in this way? Was there any valid justification for striving to be so successful that they could simply leave the rest of us behind, apocalypse or not? Or was this really their intention all along? Maybe the apocalypse is less something they're trying to escape than an excuse to realize the mindset's true goal, to rise above mere mortals and execute the ultimate exit strategy. This whole encounter is rather terrifying. It's the gamification of life, in which the goal is to survive as long as possible. But there are all kinds of games. There are strategy games, puzzle games, action games. There are tons of different genres. These rich individuals have selected two types of games to play. The first is a strategy game, in which you ruthlessly make as much money as possible, no matter the cost. You burn the world for a buck. Then the game becomes survival horror. You don't get infinite lives this time. You get just one. If you lose it, you've lost the game. Therefore, you must make the game as easy as possible. Don't worry about your contribution to the apocalypse that is coming. It was probably always going to happen whether you contributed to it or not. And besides, it's all just a game. What you need to do is take your money and build a giant survival compound. You'll need guards, food, weapons, and more. But if you do this right, you'll win. Congratulations! But what is this all really for? What comes next? Eventually, the supplies are going to run out. Eventually, the horror that you created will show up. Maybe the water system will break. Maybe there will be a coup. The idea that you could just wait all this out, holed up in a bunker, is ridiculous. You will eventually be forced out into the unknown, into a horrific world that while the canned food is in abundance, there is no way to open it. Desperation overwhelms Benny as he throws a can against the ice bank, merely denting it. Desperation changes to rage as Benny throws can after can, all to no avail. It's clear that AM has designed the cans to never break. The denting is merely false hope. Above the chaos, AM is laughing, relishing in the torture's success. Benny, with hunger overwhelming what little intelligence he has left, jumps on Gorster and begins to gnaw his face. In this swirling chaos, we see Ted's potential shine. He calmly concludes that the only way out is death. Denying AM his fun is victory in a sense. AM may stay alive, but his toys will be gone. Ted grabs a massive icicle from the ground. It's large enough to be called an ice spear, and Ted takes this spear and drives it into Benny. Not missing a beat, he grabs another and drives it into Gorster. Ellen quickly realizes what's going on, driving an icicle into Nimdok. All three men die. AM breathes in, his human-like qualities betraying his horror. There is a limit to his godhood. Even though AM can create life, stop aging, and rewire people's minds, he still cannot bring the dead back to life. Death is still an absolute threshold. Ellen looks at Ted. There is only time for one more person to die before AM intervenes. Ted grabs another ice spear and kills Ellen. 4 of the 5 remaining humans escape AM's clutches. But for Ted, his hell has just begun. AM will not make that mistake again. Ted's body changes into a great soft jelly thing. Whenever he moves, Ted leaves behind a moist trail. His body is effectively invincible. Ted is alone, endlessly trapped and tortured by AM. While the 4 escaped, it was not a complete victory. There was someone to get revenge against. There was a way for AM to avenge the crime of his toys being broken. Inwardly, alone, here, living under the land, under the sea, in the belly of AM, whom we created because our time was badly spent, and we must have known unconsciously that he could do it better. At least the 4 of them are safe at last. AM will be all the matter for that. It makes me a little happier. And yet, AM has won. Simply, he has taken his revenge. I have no mouth, and I must scream. We succeeded in building our own hell. Our brilliance is clear. AM proves that humanity is capable of godlike creations. AM can create new creatures, extend life, change our bodies, and shape our world. And we built AM. But all this pales in comparison to our greatest achievement, the end of our species. We used our brilliance to destroy our brilliance. One human remains, if you would still call Ted human. A blob-like entity is the last of humanity, destined by our folly to be tortured for all of eternity, or at least as many millennia as it will take for AM to make another mistake. AM isn't truly God, but he is damn close to it. Where did humanity go wrong? From the moment we waged war. From the moment someone realized their nation needs a supercomputer because if they don't, other nations will still build their own. A prisoner's dilemma where the result is the end of our existence. Instead of stockpiling weapons and trying to defend ourselves, we should have united to end this dilemma. We needed to prevent the problem in the first place. But instead, we tried to defend ourselves against the war. And that all failed. Every dollar spent on missile defense failed. Every dime spent on bunkers failed. Every attempt to run away failed. We should have just focused on solving humanity's problems. But we didn't. And because of that, we lost everything.